Evelyn spent most of her childhood with her parents on their farm in Ohio, so everything she remembered from her early years had something to do with that place. The cackling of gooses and the lowing of cattle. The woman knew all of these sounds from back when she was little. She'd been living in New York for many years now, but her thoughts often took her back to that careless time in her life and caused her to shed a tear or two. And now, having decided to show her son real ducks and swans, she took him to the lake in New York's Central Park. Liam's joy knew no bounds. "Mom, can I feed them, please?" the boy asked excitedly. "Of course you can, dear. Feed as much as you want," Evelyn answered with a smile. Having bought a bun from the booth nearby, the woman watched her son toss breadcrumbs to the majestic swans and voracious ducks. Evelyn got distracted at one point, so she didn't immediately notice when a poorly dressed man approached Liam and asked for a piece of bread. Being a polite and kind boy, Liam immediately handed the rest of the bun to the old man, which brought tears to his eyes. Having realized that she'd lost sight of her son, Evelyn stepped closer and saw the homeless man limping away from Liam. "Hey, sir, wait a minute. Is there anything I can help you with?" the woman asked awkwardly. The homeless man turned around and looked at Evelyn. The woman shuddered, let out an involuntary scream, and instinctively took a couple of steps back. Standing in front of her was an old man with gray, sad eyes and a strong chin on a pale, wrinkled face. Liam didn't know how to react in that particular situation, so he simply looked inquiringly at his mother. But there wasn't really anything he could say. Evelyn's thoughts started swirling in her head, picking her up in a dance of images and memories, taking her back 20 years. At that time, Evelyn lived with her parents on a farm, which didn't bring in a lot of profit, but still provided them with all the necessary agricultural products. The Johnson couple couldn't count on making the farm successful, because there was never really much order there. And that wasn't because of droughts or crop failures, but because of Floyd Johnson's tendency to abuse alcohol. Not a day passed that the young farmer didn't take to the bottle, after which a terrible fight usually ensued, the kind when dishes got broken and walls shook. Amanda Johnson yelled at her husband, but he didn't keep quiet either and responded with unbridled outbursts of aggression. At moments like these, 7-year-old Evelyn ran out of the house and hid in the old barn, which she called her second home. In all fairness, her father never hit her and limited himself to hurtful words, which left wounds that could last even longer than any physical blows would have. Nevertheless, Evelyn believed that time would pass and one day her life would change for the better and peace would reign in her family home. The poor girl couldn't have known that silence and peace would really fill her home soon, but they wouldn't bring her any joy. It happened 3 days before Christmas, when Floyd Johnson got drunk yet again. He got behind the wheel of his old Chevrolet to go to the store to get yet another bottle of whiskey. The man had gotten into a minor accident many times before, but each time he managed to get away with it somehow. But that evening, fortune turned its back on the young farmer. Having gone over the speed limit, Floyd flew into a ditch where he skidded for a few yards and crashed into a tree. The impact was so strong that the driver died before the arrival of the paramedics. When Amanda Johnson got the news, she cried and tore her hair out, but she couldn't change anything. Little Evelyn looked at her mother and couldn't fully comprehend what was going on. It was only a little later that she realized what had happened when the body of her father was being buried to the mournful sounds of a brass band. "Daddy, don't leave me, please," Evelyn screamed, escaping from her mother's arms. By the end of the funeral, Amanda had already come to her senses and stoically endured everything that was happening. During the funeral, the young widow didn't shed a single tear, which surprised Floyd's friends who came to see him off on his last journey. But Amanda didn't seem to notice the condemning looks, and standing at the edge of her husband's grave, thought about something of her own. Deep down, she didn't love Floyd, and therefore she never had any bright illusions about their happy family life. Their marriage was obviously doomed to fail, and the couple understood it all too well. After Floyd's funeral, Amanda didn't put her life on pause for a long time, and a year later, she was already in a relationship with another man. Unlike Floyd, Richard couldn't stand alcohol and was extremely respectful of Amanda and her young daughter. Moreover, the man turned out to be a professional agronomist who was confident that the Johnson farm could harvest 3 times the amount they'd been harvesting. Unfortunately, Amanda didn't share the bright hopes of her boyfriend and dreamed of moving to a big city. "What do you want with this old farm? My grandfather worked on it, then my father worked on it, and my late husband Floyd worked on it too. And no one could make it into a successful business," the woman said, not even attempting to hide her irritation. But there was no stopping Richard. The skilled agronomist had already taken soil samples and almost immediately concluded that it needed fertilizers and an irrigation system. Richard's idea was simple and effective. Having bought everything he needed, the man fertilized the soil and installed the best irrigation system. Soon, the man's efforts bore fruit. The first harvest shocked even the town's old-timers. "Dear God, if we keep up this level of production, we'll make a fortune, and then we'll be able to move out of this godforsaken village. We could even go to New York," Amanda exclaimed joyfully, looking over the sales reports. Richard pursed his lips in resentment and shook his head sadly. The man didn't want to leave the farm and move to the stone jungle to live among the countless skyscrapers and the endless traffic noise. The most interesting thing was that the man was always very affectionate towards Evelyn and treated her very kindly. From the very first day they met, the agronomist started treating the girl as his own daughter, but he never insisted that she saw him as her dad. Time flew by, making even more adjustments in the lives of the young family. Living side by side with her mother and Richard, Evelyn still couldn't bring herself to start calling the man her dad. But Richard preferred not to focus on it because he loved his adopted daughter with all of his heart. Unlike Evelyn's late father, her stepfather always found time to play with her or help her with her homework. On weekends, Richard took the family to the lake, where they set up camp, went swimming, and fried all sorts of treats on the campfire. It seemed that happiness was so near that all they had to do was reach out and grab it. However, it was all just an illusion, which hid a future full of unpredictable twists of fate. Once, when the family was out by the lake yet again, 15-year-old Evelyn decided to take a swim. Unfortunately, the teenage girl didn't tell her parents when she was going out into the water. The girl accidentally swam further than she should have and was horrified to realize that she couldn't get back. Evelyn's legs started cramping and her head was slowly going under the water. The situation was becoming critical, and if it weren't for Richard's quick reaction, the day would have ended in tragedy. The man was an excellent swimmer, so it took him mere seconds to cover the distance separating him and his stepdaughter. Richard grabbed Evelyn's hands at the very last moment and didn't let her sink to the bottom, after which he helped the girl get to the shore. A few minutes later, they were already trying to warm up by the fire and laughing contagiously, trying not to think about what could have happened a few minutes ago. That day, Evelyn called Richard Dad for the first time, which made the man truly happy. Few people knew that Richard had mumps as a child, which caused his infertility. Therefore, he treated his family as a gift from God and was ready to do literally anything to make his stepdaughter happy. But Amanda didn't appreciate Richard's paternal feelings and emphasized that Evelyn wasn't his biological daughter whenever she got the chance. However, no matter how hard Amanda tried to drive a wedge between Evelyn and her stepfather, they still considered themselves family. But then something happened that completely changed the life of the Johnson family. It all started with the fact that Amanda suggested that Evelyn should pay a visit to her great aunt who lived in Miami. Just imagine gentle ocean waves, sandy beaches, and crowds of tourists coming to take a vacation at this beautiful place, Amanda said, showing Evelyn pictures in some magazine. Of course, Evelyn was happy to accept her mother's proposal, especially after her stepfather supported this idea. Thus, the girl went on a trip to the south of the country. For a girl who grew up on a farm, the luxurious Miami resorts seemed like a magical place. Evelyn basked in the gentle sun of the South for about 3 weeks, after which she decided to go back home. However, when she saw that her mother came to pick her up at the airport alone, the girl suddenly experienced an acute panic attack. "Mom, why are you alone? Where's Dad?" Evelyn asked, getting agitated. The girl's question made Amanda turn pale, after which she answered sharply, "You don't have a father anymore. He left us. And now we're going to leave too. We're going to New York. I already got our tickets. I don't want to run the farm alone. We're going to start a new life." At first, Evelyn thought that she must have misheard or misunderstood her mother. But looking into the woman's eyes, the girl realized that everything she said was true. How could he do that? How could he be so cruel? He called me his daughter and then he just abandoned us. Evelyn kept thinking on her way to New York. The metropolis didn't welcome Amanda with open arms, and finding a good job wasn't as easy as she'd imagined. The woman must have gone to at least a dozen interviews before she finally got a job as a manager in a trading company, and thus calmed down a bit. Evelyn, on the other hand, had to attend high school in a city that always seemed alien and hostile to her. Several years have passed. Evelyn grew up and went to college, which she successfully graduated from, thereby making her mother incredibly happy. Having become a high-class lawyer, the young woman quickly found a great job that allowed her to finally feel independent. One day, when Evelyn was attending a forum on the legal literacy of business leaders, she met a man named Simon, who eventually became her husband. 2 years later, the couple had a son, Liam. In all this time, only one misfortune befell the family. The death of Evelyn's mother didn't come as a surprise, since a year and a half before, she was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. No treatment or expensive medicine could help her, and thus the woman died just 2 days before her 60th birthday. Before dying, Amanda told her daughter something she would never be able to forget. "Please forgive me. I don't have long to live, but I want to come clean before I go. Richard, he never left us. I was the one who left him. A week before your arrival, he got into a terrible car accident. He survived, but the doctors said that he would remain disabled. I already had an underage daughter to take care of. I didn't want to take care of a disabled husband too. So I took an easy way out, but I didn't want to tell you the truth." To say that Evelyn was shocked would be a huge understatement. She'd been missing Richard all this time, but she believed that he'd abandoned her, which in fact, her stepfather thought the same about Evelyn and her mother. That difficult conversation was the last one for Amanda. She never said anything else and died 3 hours after sharing the truth with her daughter. Evelyn tried to find Richard after her mother's funeral, but many years had passed and she couldn't find any information on his whereabouts. And now, so many years later, the person standing in front of Evelyn wasn't just some dirty homeless man, it was her stepfather, Richard, who always treated her like his own daughter. "Dad, Daddy!" Evelyn exclaimed, and to the great amazement of her son, rushed to hug the homeless man. That long-awaited reunion had it all: the tears, the astonished exclamations of passers-by, and so much joy. As it turned out later, the doctors were wrong, and Richard didn't end up bedridden. Having realized that his family had abandoned him, the man fell into a deep depression, and it was only the young PT specialist who managed to pull the young man out of it. He was the one who helped Richard to get back on his feet through many hours of physical therapy and medical massages. By the time Richard was discharged from the clinic, all that reminded him of the car accident was his slight limp, which was impossible to get rid of. Unfortunately, having suddenly lost his home, his job, and his family, Richard couldn't pull himself together and started drinking. Ended up on the street in just a few years. Wandering from place to place, he eventually settled in New York, which he never really liked before. Even though he had stopped drinking by now, he couldn't rewind time and get his old life back. Unfortunately, Richard was an orphan, so he didn't have any other family besides his stepdaughter and his wife, Amanda, who'd abandoned him. Seeing Evelyn in front of him, Richard couldn't hold back his tears. The elderly man didn't hold a grudge against her and was unspeakably happy to see his daughter again. Somehow, the homeless man always knew that he would get to see her again one day, and they'd be able to tell each other everything they hadn't said before. Taking Evelyn and Liam by the hand, Richard limped towards his new and happy life, which he'd been dreaming of for so very long during the cold nights in his unheated shack. The man knew that from then on, his life would be completely different and that no one would ever betray him again.